Welcome back, team, for the web services testing using SoapUI session of day 3. So let's have a quick look at the agenda. So the agenda basically does have a quick recap of day 1 and 2, and also we'll be going through the application overview or else the web services that we are going to see today, and we'll be covering assertions today. So recap of day 1 and day 2, what we have discussed on day 1 and day 2. Day 1 is more on explaining what is the mode of operating at, or what is the mode of training at ITeLearn. So at ITeLearn we believe in practice. For the benefit of those who are attending this session for the first time, ITeLearn is believes in practice. So that's how we train people here. Not only the theoretical aspects will be covered, but also you will be doing the same, you will be practicing the same by taking a couple of projects, out of which one project can straight away get into your resume as a current project, and whatever the activities that you perform here, or whatever the deliverables that you produce by the activities that you perform as a part of the project training, those activities can be converted as responsibilities in your resume. So once you're done with the course, it will be like you'll have the current resume, current project. The project description would be the same as the one which you are going to take up as a live project in the course. The description will be shared as well, so during the course, and the activities that you perform, day-to-day activities, will be nothing but your responsibilities for that particular project in your resume. So why I'm insisting that point is, when you go for an interview, it's a common thing, 80 to 90% of the interviews goes like this. The interviewer will be focusing on your resume. Your resume, what does it have? It gives a gist of your skill set, the summary, and then your experience details, if at all, if you're experienced, or else your academic details, your education background and all that stuff, and then you'll be having your project descriptions and responsibilities. And the project description will be the same as the live project, and the responsibilities will be your day-to-day activities. So team, what I want to say here is, once the course is over, or else towards the end of the course, you're good to go to support one complete project. So in the interview, the questions that you get on the responsibilities are nothing but the day-to-day activities you perform during the training. So it's not tough. It will be easy for you to get through the interviews. That's the point which I want to stress here. So that's majorly which is being covered in day 1. Along with that, we did talk about who can opt for this training. So one who doesn't have any knowledge on testing can also opt for this. There are basic prerequisites. The prerequisites are nothing but the basic computer skills, and basic knowledge of testing would help, and basic knowledge of XML would help. However, if those skills are not there yet, or else if you don't possess those skills yet, not to worry, those will be covered as a part of the training as per the demand. So it will be on a need basis. We will be touching upon the testing concepts as well, the functional testing or the manual testing concepts as well, along with the web services testing. And day 1 and day 2, what we did see is, how can we build a manual test plan. We took a simple scenario, a simple live project. It's not a live project, it's a simple project in which we did talk about temperature conversions. So team, you can go back and search for web services testing using SoapUI day 1 and day 2. I would recommend you to go to day 2 to concentrate much on SoapUI, and day 1 to understand how ITeLearn operates and whether you can opt for this training or not, what are the prerequisites you need. So those videos are available on the web in YouTube, or else you can go to ITeLearn site and go through the videos, so you'll get a fair understanding of what I'm talking now, or what we did discuss as a part of day 1 and day 2. So coming to day 2, we tried to correlate manual testing versus with web services testing. So how web services testing is similar to manual testing, or the other way around, how web services testing is different from that of manual testing. So we tried to build a test plan over there. We did build a test plan, and we had written a couple of test cases as well for the web service. We did present the web service with an UI, user interface, where you can give the temperature values in Fahrenheit or Celsius and get converted into Fahrenheit or Celsius. So we did test that through the UI, which is nothing but our manual testing, and then we jumped on to the web service. We did write a couple of web service test cases. We used SoapUI. SoapUI is a tool which basically helps us do the web services testing. So it does have a predominant stake in the market, and it comes as a freeware. And of course, SoapUI Pro is there from the same vendor, which does have many more properties or many more features, I can say, which does come up with a license. So SoapUI, a small introduction of SoapUI was given as a part of day 2, and then we moved on to creating the test suite, creating requests using SoapUI, and then running the test suite, and then analyzing the results. That's all what was dealt as a part of day 1 and day 2. So now we are on day 3. We will have a short session on assertions, what assertions are. And team, just a note here, whatever the terminology that we come across for the guys, or for the participants for whom this is the first session in web services testing, if you don't know anything about a web service or the terminology that we come across, no need to worry. In the latter sessions, we will be having a detailed discussion about what each term is meant for, what is a web service, and we come across terms like WSDL, web service description language, what is XML schema, what is XML basically, so what is the role that XML plays here, what is SOAP, what is SOAP protocol, what is UDDI. Likewise, these terms we come across, and what is the architecture behind the web services and the web services testing and SoapUI. So that will be dealt in detail in the next or later sessions. But for the time being, what you need to understand for the first timers, what we need to understand is, what is a web service? A web service in simple terms is nothing but a service over the web. A service over the web. Over the web, if you're requesting for a service and you're getting a response, it's nothing but a web service. So it does have two things here. One is request and the other one is response. So let's take a simple example. If you look at Facebook, you're trying to log in. So we give the credentials there, username and password, and we hit on the go button. We get to see the home page, like the user home page, depending upon the credentials. So what happens behind the scenes? When you give the username and password and hit the go button, what happens is it in turn will invoke a web service which is rested or hosted on a server somewhere in US. It depends upon the application again. In some location, we can say, rather to specify a specific location. So what's happening there? By giving the username and password, you are requesting a login into the application. So what is the response you get? It will validate the login details and it will respond back saying that, hey, you know what, the credentials that you are given are valid and this is your home page. So that's what a web service is. But of course, this is for the first timers, just to understand at a 30,000 feet what a web service is. At a high level, it's a high level definition, I can say. To keep it simple, it's a request over the web and you get the response for the same. Okay. And team, again, you can go back and search for web services testing using SoapUI day 1 and day 2. Web services testing using SoapUI day 2. These are the two videos that were posted on the web, on YouTube, as well as in ITeLearn site. You can go back and go through day 1 and day 2 sessions so that you'll get a clear picture of whatever we have discussed up till now. Having said that, we'll move on to day 3 now. So web service under test, what we are going to consider today is we'll pick up 1 or 2 web services which are available over the net or over the web. So team, don't worry or don't get glued to the impression that we'll be picking web services over the web which are free for the training purpose. It's not like that. When we get into the paid sessions or when we get into the consequent sessions, we will be talking about creating our own web services and deploying them locally and over the web as well. And then we'll start testing them. So those are proprietary web services which we will be developing on our own, and that's what I told you, that can be kept as the current project in your resume. So whatever we are going to deal today will be one more sample project just to explain the concept of assertions. So having said that, you can go to a site called xmethods.net. So this is a site which will be hosting different web services. So here the publisher of the web service you can find on the left side, and then again style. We'll get into details as of what this style is, and you can see a term called RESTful services. So what is this, we'll be seeing at a later point during our sessions. And then again the service name we have the descriptions, what that service is specifically for. So what you can do is, for your practice you can use this. However, in our regular sessions, the paid sessions, once we get on to the day 4 and so on, we'll be concentrating on developing our own web services, and we'll be using our own proprietary application, which is nothing but your current project in your resume. So for the time being, you can practice this using the different methods that are different web services that are available in this site. So we'll pick one web service from here. So I'll look at the stock code. What it does is it provides a stock code for a given company symbol. So if at all, if you are looking for a specific company stock, you can use this particular web service. So I was talking about the WSDL, web service description language, or some call it as web service definition language as well, but both does mean the same. It will describe your web service, how your web service should be there. Okay, so this is the link for your WSDL. So this is how it is to be defined. So XLMNS stands for the namespaces. We'll get into details when we talk about when we discuss about XML. We have separate sessions for XML. We have separate sessions for WSDL, understanding WSDL, and creating sample visitors, using those visitors and deploying the web services. That stuff we'll be doing as a part of the practice. We'll try to understand what XML is, basic XML, and then we'll try to understand XML schema as well, because we will be doing schema validations also as a part of web service testing. And then again we'll try to understand the intricacies of visitor, like what is port type, what is a message, and all that stuff. So what is port type is one thing which we need to concentrate on, and message, likewise we have binding. So these are all the key terms, or we can call them as keywords. Okay, we have bindings, we have port types, and we have data types, we have messages, and on the top you can see the definition. We have XLMNS, we talk about namespaces, we talk about schemas, we talk about bindings, we talk about port types, we talk about messages. These are the different entities on which a WSDL file is developed. So a WSDL is nothing but how the web service should be, and what sort of data should be there, what sort of inputs you're going to give, what sort of requests you're going to generate, and what sort of response you can anticipate, these details, and what is the endpoint or where your web service is hosted. All these details will be there in your WSDL file. How it should be, the description, the definition will be in the WSDL file. However, as I said before, we will have a detailed discussion on WSDL file as of what is WSDL, what does each entity talk about, and creating a sample WSDL, using the same for deploying the web service, and you test it. So having said that, a high level point which you have to note for the time being is a WSDL file basically describes the web service, and WSDL is nothing but WSDL, web service description language. So we'll quickly move on to understand what this web service does for us. Okay, as I told you earlier, this web service basically pulls the stock, the current stock of a particular company, and it says company symbol. So what does it say? It says company symbol. So this is the one which we did pick for today's session. So what does it do? It provides a stock code for a given company symbol. So if you are talking about JP Morgan, you need to give the company symbol. If you're talking about Apple, you need to give the company symbol. If you're talking about General Motors, you need to give the company symbol. Okay, so we will see one more site where we can directly get the stock codes of different companies along with the symbols, and then we'll go to SoapUI, use this WSDL and get the responses in time, create a test suite, get the responses in real time, and just validate against what we are expecting. So then after that we'll move on to our assertions, how to use this expected and actual to validate the tests using assertions. So now we'll quickly move on to the site where we can find the original stock values. So we have a site called stocks.tradingcharts.com/stocks, and then symbols, and then as we have it here. So this is the site basically which will give directly the values. So if at all, if I have to pick something called Infosys, so anything containing Infosys will be given, it will be given a search, and then again it will return. So you can search the exchanges as well, or else you can make it global and then search. So here the company name is Infosys Limited and the symbol is INFI, and exchange it did pick is New York Stock Exchange, and then we have the quotes and charts as well. So charts we are least bothered, we are not into stock broking or something, we are just trying to understand the web service. So we'll go with the quote. So the most recent activity, the last trade value is $46.41, and the transaction size is this much, 53 to 59, and the volume is this much, and the change is minus 1.06. So what is the symbol here? INFI, INFY for Infosys. So this is the stock I got. Let's go back to our, what we need to do is we need to make a note of these values. What are the values that we see here? These values should be populated from the web service. When we run the web service, it should hit the same server and it should give all these values, the last trade, volume, all these values. So we'll keep the space as it is and we'll move on to our web service, and we'll try to pull the value, we'll try to run the web service, and we'll try to pull the values as a part of the response, and we'll try to validate those values with the real-time values to validate whether the web service is working in the real time or not. Okay, so we'll quickly go to the WSDL. We'll take the WSDL file. So we'll have our SoapUI open. So 4.5.2 is the latest version. So what you can do is you can go for a new SoapUI project. Give the project name. I'll say day 3, and I'll say assertions. So here is the initial WSDL or WADL. What is WADL? We'll be discussing in detail at a later point, but not now. So for the time being, it's enough if we understand what WSDL is. So we'll have the WSDL file copied here. If you have a file in hand, you can browse and get that handy here, and you can open that WSDL file here, or else you can simply copy paste the URL from this is the URL WSDL. What we did is we did navigate to the xmethods.net website, and then we did pick the stock web service, stock quote web service, and then we did take the WSDL URL from here. This is the endpoint of the web service. It's nothing but your target. So you had copied the same here in your initial WSDL. So create request, there are a couple of options here, and again for the benefit of the first timers, I'm going with this. So create request, if you check that checkbox, it will create sample requests. So that's what we did talk when I was defining the web service. I told you team that a web service is nothing but a request and a response over the web. So here we are talking about sample requests for all the operations. So what does SoapUI will do is, what a SoapUI does for us here is, it will take the WSDL and it will generate the requests for all the operations. So here, what are the operations are there that we'll see, and also along with that, what you can ask SoapUI to do is to create a test suite for the imported WSDL. So the moment you're trying to create the request, the same time you can ask SoapUI to create the test suite as well. SoapUI is pretty much easy to use, and it does have a lot of features, and one good feature is that it will prepare the requests and also the test cases in a test suite form for us. And create a mock service. Mock servicing is again one interesting topic, and which is the most touched upon topic when we go to the interviews, and a bit challenging as well, but however it's tailored easy for you, it's made easy for you. And again, REST service is one more area which we will talk about. The REST services or RESTful services we can say, and relative paths as well will be discussed at a later point, and create a web test case as well. So what you need to understand for the time being is the project name is nothing but your name of the project. It can be a customized one, and initial WSDL or WADL file. Here we are providing a WSDL file. If you have a file directly, you can give the file by clicking on the browse button, or else you can enter the WSDL URL. And then again, if you want the request, you can check this. If you want the test cases also to be created by SoapUI, you can ask SoapUI to do that by checking this checkbox. So now that we have given enough options here, we'll look at what SoapUI does for us. So it's asking us to, while creating the test cases for the test suite, so generates a test suite with test cases for all the operations in this interface. So these are the operations that are available that came along with the WSDL file that we had given as an input here for this test. So the web services here, there are two operations. One is get the stock code and get world major indices. We don't want this, or we are not going to deal with this. Rather, we'll look at the stock code. Okay, and you can mark one test case for each operation, or else single test case with one request for each operation. Okay, if at all, if an operation is having multiple requests, okay, it says that it will create multiple test cases for you, but there will be one request and we create one test case. So one test case for each operation would be an apt one. So we had unselected this or unchecked this because we don't want this operation to be considered. So if at all, if you are working on load test, it generates a default load test for each created test case as well. So web services are tested independently. Let me park this for a while and speak a sentence or two about this load test. And again, you can go back to the day 1 and day 2 sessions to understand what all will be considered as a part of web service testing. We have security testing, we have functional testing, we have data driven testing, we have load testing as well. So if you look at the entire testing gamut from outside, like from the testing standpoint, we have performance testing separately for different applications. We have security testing on applications. Okay, we have database testing as a separate entity. So each one of these are separate engineering areas, whereas when it comes to web service doesn't have an UI. Let me specify that team doesn't have an UI. It's headless testing basically. You can't see it. Okay, you can't, but still SoapUI will allow us to give the inputs as if though we are entering the inputs in the UI. Okay, so load test is one feature again. If at all, if you want to do some load test for this web service, you can create the test case for that. Rather, I would say SoapUI will create the test case for that, provided you check this checkbox. So you can enter a customized name of your choice, or else go with the default one as I did now. So here we go. We got the test suite created. So these are the list of test suite properties. We need to sorry, it's showing sample project properties. We need to click on test suite properties, name and the value, and if at all if there are any custom properties, those will be listed out here, along with, like, you can even add properties to that. Okay, so this is your test suite, and these are your test cases. So we did mention, or we did tell SoapUI saying that one test case should be created for one operation, right? So this is the result for us. It had created a test case for an operation. So this is your request. You can see the test request properties, name, description, message size, etc., etc. We will get to see what each property and property value stands for in our detailed sessions. And for now, you need to understand that this is the request that you are sending. So at the test steps level or the test case level, you can see the properties. At each level, you can check the properties. So what we'll do here is we'll try to understand what the test case is. Double click on the get stock quote. There are 4 options here. You can look at the XML file directly. This is the request file that you're going to send, or that you're going to request to the web service. So what all we have here? We have a SOAP envelope, and then a SOAP header. So body, within the SOAP body, you're having the get stock quote operation. So we'll get to see in detail, again I'm saying that we will get to see in detail, line by line, word by word, what's there in the UI in our detailed sessions, that are the paid sessions or the consequent sessions. For those who cannot make it to the live trainings, they can opt for the videos as well. A week or so from now, we will be hosting the videos as well. You can go to ITeLearn and purchase the videos if at all, if you cannot make it to the live training team. So getting back to our test case, we have this request file as a part of the test case. So the question mark here should be replaced by your company symbol. So what is the symbol which we did pick here? INFY, INFI. Let's go back and see in our site where the stock values are given. So these are the values that we got. We need to validate these against the web service that we are going to invoke through SoapUI. So we changed the value here. We had given the company symbol. We'll just say okay. Here we go. We got the response. See, if you look at the company symbol is again INFI, and last is 46.41. So these are the values that you need to validate against the real-time values. So let's go back to the site, and you can see these are the values. So what is the last trade? 46.41. What is the value we got here for the last trade? 46.41. Okay, and let's look at the volume, 1935685, and we have a volume here 1935685. So it says basically that our website is web service is working fine. So in the earlier case, what happened is there's a site which does have an UI, so this site is also invoking the same web service and taking the URL of the visitor. We are also invoking the same web service, and we try to validate whether our web service is working fine or not by taking these values and validating them against these values. Okay, and now that we got a confirmation saying that yes, our web service is working fine. So we'll move on to assertions. What is an assertion basically? And where can you apply an assertion? And how many number of assertions can be applied? So what is an assertion? Why an assertion? And how many assertions can be applied on a test step? All these things we'll be discussing now. So assertions basically will allow the user to validate the responses. It allows the user to validate the message received by a test step during execution. We'll just make a note of it so that it will act as a reference for us. So it's a common practice at ITeLearn whenever we get through some important definitions, or else if we feel that it's a frequently asked question or an important topic, we will prepare this runtime reference material as well, along with the static reference material that we are going to share with you along with the videos as a part of the live training exercise, or live training course rather I would say. So here we need to understand first what is a assertion. So assertion, what it does, it allows us or the user to validate the message received. So it basically validates the message received. Message received from where? Message received by a test step, because we are executing a test case here and we are concentrating on the steps as well. So message received by a test step during the execution, or we can be more specific here saying that during the test execution. So what is assertion? Assertion in a nutshell, it allows the user, it's a feature available in SoapUI, allowing the user to validate the message received by a test step during the test execution. So how to insert these assertions, or what are these assertions, like how they are going to help us, we'll see in a short while. If you look at the right side pane, window pane, this is nothing but your response for the request that we had sent here. So based on the input that you give here, we'll get a response here. Okay, and these values can be validated provided you have those values handy, and these values we did pick from this site. So go to this test step. You can do n number of manipulations. You can customize or you can enhance your test step using not only assertions, but also there are different entities. You can create a SOAP test request for a test step. You can go for groovy scripting. You can go for adding properties in the sense, if at all, if you look at request can be considered as a property, and inf will be a property value. You can go to property transfer, and if at all, if you have a conditional statement, you can insert that conditional statement using, go to here, and you can expect, and you can insert a time delay whenever you expect a delay in the response. So this is to run the test case. We have the same thing on the top as well, and rest is something we will be discussing in detail at a later point. We have manual test steps as well. We have data source loop, and data sync. All these data related will be dealt as a part of our data driven testing session. So there's a separate session for data driven testing as well. So what we'll be doing there is we'll be discussing in detail what is a data source, what is a data source loop, and what is data sync, what sort of external data files can be used, how to segregate the data, how to create a framework around the data driven testing using SoapUI. So these things will help you there. So that we have a separate session. We'll deal that at a later point. So again, we can interact with the database as well. We can interact with the database as well. So we have a separate session for that also, how to get connected to the databases, what sort of databases will be supported, and what sort of data can be pulled, and how you can pull that data from a database. All these details will be dealt again in a separate session. Having said that, we'll move on to the next option we have, that is the assertion here. Okay, you can say assertion test step. I'll just leave the defaults here. I'll not give any customized names, not to confuse you. So this is your assertion. If you look at the test step again, I'll go back to the test step. So here you can see the assertion test step here. This is the request and this is the assertion. Okay, and the properties of the same will be listed out here in the left side bottom navigation pane, or else left side bottom window pane, you can specify either ways. So you go to the assertion step here, double click on that, you will navigate to the assertion step, assertion wizard basically. So you can have these assertions added by clicking this particular link here. Sorry. So this link will help you to add assertions. So once you click on this link, you will get to see this window, and here you have the option to select the source. So are you setting the assertions at a project level? If it is yes, you need to go with this, or else if it is at the test suite level, you need to go with this, or else if it is at the test case level, you need to go with this. And step 1, which is nothing but the get stock code, at a step level you need to go with this. I'll select this for the time being, and the property which you are looking at can be a raw request, it can be domain, username and password. So what are these username and password? Your web service can be password protected as well. Okay, and then again response, request, endpoint, we did discuss about endpoint, the target. Okay, and authorization type. So we'll look at each and every entity at a later point, but for the time being we'll pick the response and we'll see what sort of assertions can be inserted for this particular property. So these are the list of assertions that we can insert. So it will list out the recently used. We need to start from here, property content. So there are different assertions here. So contains will help us to identify, if at all, if you're looking at, say, we'll go back here and we are looking at the last trade value. So the last trade value in the response will be your property, and will be your entity, and the value for the same you can tag it here. So contains, I can say last trade contains 46.41. If I say last trade contains 46.41, what happens? It in the response file it will check for that value. Let me add it here. I'll look at the symbol, company symbol first, and you can ignore the case in the comparison. Say OK. So you have an assertion added over there. We'll add one more assertion. We'll go to the test tab and property content. Say we did use the contains. You can also say not contains, and you can also use XPath match. What is XPath match and what is X query match we'll get to see at a later point in detail. And there are other categories as well. Compliance. So if at all if you get invalid HTTP status codes, you can validate that. Not so fault, SOAP fault. When we run these SOAP messages or when we run the web services, there are certain SOAP faults that we can expect back depending upon how the web service is being developed. Okay, so if we are expecting a particular SOAP fault, we can validate that as well. It says not SOAP fault. It validates the last received message and it will check if it is a SOAP fault or not. If it is not, it will get passed. If it is a SOAP fault, then it will get failed. Okay, and it's applicable only for SOAP test steps. Also, we can validate the XML schema. So we can check the schema compliance as well. Okay, and we can check the not SOAP fault is one more. Likewise, we have the script assertion. We have something called SLA. What is this SLA? SLA is nothing but whenever your developer develops the web service, he will be asked to develop the web service in such a way that the response time will be fixed. SLA is nothing but service level agreement. At the service level, any service, it can be web service or it can be any service, we will be having an SLA. Okay, if you think about the food industry, if you think about the transport industry, if you think about the insurance industry or anything else, anything in this materialistic world, you can have a agreement at the service level, and here we talk about the web service level agreement. So, and this response SLA basically talks about the response times. So if at all if there is a specific time that is being given to the developer, he should develop the web service in such a way that the response time should be less than that. So we'll try to add a response time as well. So what we'll do is we'll give 2 here instead of 200, and let's get back to the assertions. Select step, and we are done with script. We are done with compliance. Compliance will pick one, not SOAP fault. So we did discuss what not SOAP fault will stand for. If at all if you don't get a SOAP fault, or else if you're expecting a SOAP fault, then it could be an intentional fail. So SLAs, and we have JMS, Java Messaging Service. Okay, basically it talks about the queues and all that stuff, and on the top of everything we have the security assertion as well. So we did add a couple of assertions here. So there are 3 assertions. First one is we are checking the response whether it's containing infi as the company symbol or not, and the second one is we have an SLA for 2 seconds here, so the response should be generated within that time frame or else it should be a fail. And the third one is we are expecting a SOAP fault. We are not expecting a SOAP fault, and if at all if it is a SOAP fault, if it is true, then we need to check the status. So we'll get back to the test case and we'll run the test case. So the test case got failed. Where did it fail? It did fail in the assertion test step. So what did fail? Did we get a SOAP fault? No. So it got passed. Did we get the infi INFY as a value in the response? Yes, we got it. So this particular step also got passed because we got a valid response. This is what we did check for, and we got the same thing. Okay, and these values, these assertion values can be added. Many more can be added based on what we do is we'll get these values here as the requirements. So we'll start adding all those assertions, like last trade will be one assertion, volume will be one assertion, and these values will be the real-time values. You'll get those values from the requirements. So those will be added in your test as assertions. Each value will be one assertion, and you'll be validating when you run that. If assertion test step gets failed, then you need to see that whatever you're expecting is not the one which you are getting as actual result. So response time here, we did specify 2, so the response time is more than that. That's why it got failed. Okay, and not a SOAP fault. It's valid because we didn't get any SOAP fault. SOAP fault are the errors that were intentionally embedded into these web service calls. So for specific values, they will be sending the fault error. The specific error codes will be there. So if at all, if you are anticipating that fault well in advance, then you need to go for the not so fault. You need to select the source. It can be at the suite level, it can be at the test case level, or it can be at the request level or test step, basically what we say. And if you look at the compliance, we will be having the not so fault. And if at all, if you are worried about the schema, you can do that also as well. You can add that also as well. Okay, so you need to specify the URL to be validated. It automatically pulls the WSDL URL, and this is the schema. So we will run this again. So what got failed again? Response. We did just modify this. It's taking more than this, it seems. We'll remove this and we'll add this again because there's only one value. So response SLA, I'll take the default time and I'll run the test case once again. So again the response got failed. Let me make it 2000 microseconds. So now we'll try to run this. Yes, we got a test passed over there. Our assertions got through. So there are 4 assertions here. Likewise, in the real time, what we do is we'll add on assertions for each entity. It's nothing but one field value here. We have the last trade field. This is one field. This is one field. This is one field, and previous close or previous change. Each of these are different fields and field values in the UI. And based on these, you will be having different assertions. So one for each field value can be given, and at the top of those you can have the compliance and fault codes and response times as well. So this is a short exercise that we did on assertions. Having said that, we'll quickly look at the questions if you have anything. So if you have any questions, you can quickly type them in the chat window. So does WSDL will be given by the developer for any application when we need to start SoapUI tool? Yes. WSDL will be shared by the development team. However, as a web service test engineer, you should be good enough to understand what the WSDL is, because based on that, SoapUI will be generating your tests and requests. But yes, it will be shared by the development team or else the deployment or implementations team. But you should be good enough to understand what a WSDL is, what are the different entities in that, and what are the different tests that can be developed based on a WSDL file. So we'll have an exercise of understanding the WSDLs and creating sample WSDLs as well. Any other questions? Did that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? So we have a forum at ITeLearn. You can go back to the forum and look at the previous session question and answers. And if at all, if you have any question, you can post that question as well in the forum at ITeLearn. We have a web service testing forum as well. So at a later point while you practice, if you have any questions, you can post them there and you'll get the answers. So we'll conclude the day 3 session for now. Go through the videos day 1 and day 2, which are available at ITeLearn and also on YouTube. You need to go for search web service testing using SoapUI day 1 and day 2. So we'll have ITeLearn over there. So web service forum is again, we have a question from Masood here. What is web service forum? It's nothing but the technical support that we give from ITeLearn site. It's kind of, you know, if at all, if you get any questions, you can post them. It's kind of a blog, you can say, within ITeLearn. We give the technical support during the practice sessions. Did that answer your question, Masood? Oh, you're asking the address of the forum. You can go to the ITeLearn and you'll have ITeLearn/forums. Anyways, I'll send that link to you all, the forums link. Anything else? Any other questions? You're welcome, Masood. Any other questions? So team, if at all, if you're interested to pick this course, what you need to do is go to ITeLearn. We have a pricing section over there. You need to go there, select the web service testing course. There are 2 options. One is live training with demos, with videos and the videos. If at all, if your time frame or if your bandwidth doesn't allow you to pick the live trainings, you can go for buying the videos, or else you can opt for the live trainings where you have much interaction with the within the team and as well with the presenter or with the trainer, by which you can get benefited. So you can go back, check the price list and check your bandwidth and go for buying the live trainings or the videos. Having said that, thank you all for being here, for your time. Hope we'll meet again for the paid sessions. Thanks again.